Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're presenting this as the FBS podcast. So glad you could join us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Our mission, as always, is, well, to take complex information, sometimes really dense stuff, and just distill it down, make it clear, make it actionable for you.
Think of it as your essential guide, helping you stay informed without getting totally swamped.
Exactly. And today, it's a really crucial deep dive. We've tailored this specifically for you, our mid-career professionals listening in. It's all part of the Forest Business School's commitment, really.
Helping you navigate what's happening in your industry.
It's
It's always evolved, right? And we want you to have the knowledge to, well, not just survive, but really thrive.
Absolutely. So our focus today, it's this piece of legislation called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025.
That name certainly catches the ear.
It does, doesn't it? And it should, because this act is, well, it's a major overhaul, a foundational shift in federal tax policy.
And understanding it is absolutely critical, especially for your strategic planning if you're in, say, logging, forestry consulting, or sawmilling.
Right. So our goal here is simple. Provide an objective look, nonpartisan. We're just looking at the impacts, the opportunities, stripping away the politics to see what it actually means for businesses.
And just to be clear about our source, our whole analysis today, it comes directly from the Forest Business School white paper on the One Big Beautiful Act. It's dated July 4, 2025.
A very timely white paper.
Indeed. It's comprehensive, really digs into the implications. We've basically gone through it to pull out the most important bits for you.
Yeah, we're guiding you through how these changes are likely to affect businesses like yours. The logging operations, the forestry consultants, the sawmills.
We'll look at both sides. The advantages, which are significant, but also the trade-offs. We want you to have that balanced picture.
Consider this your roadmap. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack this thing, starting with the basics. Why is this act seen as such a, well, a foundational shift?
Okay, so the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it's H.R. 1, 119th Congress, officially was signed into law back in May 2025.
And getting it passed wasn't straightforward, right?
Not at all. The white paper mentions it followed a pretty narrow House vote. That tells you there were some deep divisions about its provisions. It wasn't universally popular, let's say.
So politically charged from the start, but from a policy angle.
It's a major reworking of federal tax policy. But, and this is important, it's not entirely new. It builds on what came before.
Ah, okay. So it connects to previous legislation.
Exactly. The white paper specifically frames it as an expansion, a continuation, really, of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Right, TCJA. I remember that one.
So instead of a completely fresh start, this act kind of doubles down on certain ideas from 2017, makes some things permanent that were going to expire, pushes other things further.
Which brings, I guess, some predictability, but maybe new complexities, too.
Precisely. And it has a very clear target audience. The white paper points directly to sole proprietors and what we call pass-through entities.
Okay, define pass-through for us quickly.
Sure. It's a business structure. Think S-Corp, partnerships, LLCs, where the business income, losses, deductions, credits, they all pass through directly to the owner's personal tax returns.
So the business itself isn't taxed.
Correct. The owners pay tax at their individual rates. It avoids that double taxation you see with traditional C corporations.
Got it. And why is that structure important here?
Because this bill's impact is felt directly on the owner's personal tax liability. And who uses these structures? Often it's the small family-run businesses in logging, forestry, sawmilling, the backbone of the industry, really.
The independent loggers, the local mill owners, the consultants.
Exactly, those folks, the ones really powering the rural economy.
Okay, so the aim of the act is basically to help these specific businesses.
The stated aim, yes. It's designed to stimulate private investment, improve cash flow for these working lands businesses, get capital moving, incentivize growth.
Right, alter the economics for them. Okay, so now we get to the really interesting part. What are the core provisions? What's actually in this bill that's going to affect our listeners?
Well, one of the biggest changes, and honestly a source of relief for many, is about the Qualified Business Income Deduction, QBI, Section 199A.
Ah, yes, the QBI deduction. What's changed?
It's been permanently increased. It goes from 20% up to 23%, and that new rate kicks in starting in 2026.
Permanently. That's the key word there, isn't it?
Absolutely monumental. Remember, the original QBI deduction was set to expire in 2025. That sunset clause created so much uncertainty for long-term planning.
Yeah, hard to plan investments when you don't know if a MAPE deduction will just disappear.
Exactly. So now, that uncertainty, gone. It's a solid permanent provision.
And the impact, what does that extra 3% mean?
It means a larger share of your business profits permanently is shielded from federal tax. That directly helps you keep more of your earnings.
Which you can then reinvest, pay down debt, build a buffer.
Precisely. Strengthen your financial position. Let's make it concrete. The white paper uses an example, Laura.
Okay, tell us about Laura.
Laura's a sole proprietor, runs a small forestry consulting business up in Vermont, does sustainable management plans, timber valuations, that sort of thing.
Right, good niche.
And she typically earns about, say, $160,000 a year in qualified business income.
Okay, so under the old 20% rule.
She could deduct $32,000, which was good, but again, temporary. Always that bit of caution in her planning.
But now, with the permanent 23%.
Now she deducts $36,800.
So that's an extra $4,800 deducted. What's the actual cash saving?
The white paper estimates it could cut her federal tax bill by somewhere between $1,100 and $1,500 each year. Depends on her bracket, other deductions, of course.
Might not sound like a fortune, but year after year and permanent.
That's the point. It's predictable relief. For you, the listener, this isn't just a minor tweak. It allows for much more solid, long-term financial planning.
You can make decisions about hiring, tech investment, expansion, building reserves with more confidence.
Exactly. It turns what was a temporary benefit into a real cornerstone of financial strategy. Retain more earnings. Plan for growth.
Okay, that's a clear benefit on the income side. What about investments like equipment? You mentioned growth.
Ah, yes. Equipment. This is another huge one. Section 179 expensing limits, they've been doubled.
Doubled. Okay, explain Section 179 again quickly.
Section 179 lets businesses deduct the full purchase price of qualifying equipment in the year it's put into service, rather than depreciating it over time.
Right, immediate write-off instead of spreading it out.
Exactly. And the annual cap for that immediate write-off, it's now up to $2.5 million.
Wow, $2.5 million. What was it before? Around half that.
Roughly, yes. And the phase-out threshold, where the deduction starts to decrease, that begins at $4 million in total equipment purchases now.
So the practical effect.
You can deduct the full cost of a lot more equipment right away. This immediately cuts your taxable income and, maybe more importantly, drastically improves your cash flow. It's like getting an immediate tax break.
I can see how that helps businesses that maybe delayed upgrades because of the old limits or just the cash flow implications.
Absolutely. And think about logging and sawmilling. These are incredibly capital-intensive sectors.
Oh, yeah. Feller bunchers, forwarders, edgers, kilns. We're talking serious money. Hundreds of thousands, easily.
Millions sometimes. So the ability to write off those huge costs immediately, that's a massive incentive to modernize, to invest.
Let's use another example. Does the white paper have one?
It does. Let's talk about Big Gino.
Big Gino, okay.
He's an independent logger, sole proprietor, runs a one-man cut-to-length operation up in northern New Hampshire, grosses maybe $300,000, nets around $110,000.
Hard worker.
Definitely. And he needs a new forwarder, critical piece of kit for him. He's looking at a used one for about $180,000.
Okay. Under the old rules, maybe he could write off some, but not all at once.
Depending on the exact limits in his other purchases, maybe not all at once, but now with the $2.5 million cap, that $180,000 is no problem at all.
He could deduct the whole thing in year one.
The entire $180,000. In fact, he could buy more gear that same year and still likely be under the cap.
So what does that do to his taxes? If his net income is $110K and he deducts $180K.
He essentially wipes out his taxable income for the year, shows a loss of about $70,000 for tax purposes, which he might be able to carry forward.
Wow, and the immediate tax savings.
The white paper puts the direct federal income tax saving at over $22,000 for Gino, plus potential state tax benefits too, depending on New Hampshire law.
That's significant.
It really is. And the bigger picture here, the fascinating part, is how this directly pushes businesses to upgrade now. It boosts efficiency, safety, productivity across the industry.
Turns equipment buying into a tax strategy, not just an operational need.
Exactly. Invest now, get the tax benefit now. It encourages modernization.
Okay, so we have income benefits with QBI, investment benefits with Section 179. What about longer-term concerns, like passing the business on? That's always a big worry for family operations.
A huge worry. And the Act tackles this directly with the estate tax.
Ah, the death tax, as some call it. What's the change there?
The federal estate tax exemption, the amount you can pass on tax-free, has been significantly increased. It's going up to $15 million per individual.
$15 million.
Per person. And crucially, $30 million for married couples, effective 2026.
That's a big jump. Why is this particularly important for forestry and sawmills?
Because so much of the value in these businesses is tied up in, well, illiquid assets, land, timberland especially, heavy, long-lasting mill equipment, inventory.
Stuff you can't easily sell off a piece of to pay a tax bill.
Exactly. So this higher exemption removes a massive barrier to passing the business down through generations. Before, families might have had to sell off land or equipment or even the whole business just to cover the estate tax.
Heartbreaking, really. Breaking up legacies built over generations.
It was a major problem. This change helps preserve those family businesses, keeps them intact, avoids forced sales, taking out big loans just for taxes. It's about continuity.
Okay, let's bring in another example.
Let's talk about Carlos. He owns a small custom sawmill, sits on about 70 acres in Wisconsin. Land, mill inventory, maybe worth around $5 million total.
And he wants to pass it to the next generation.
Yes, planning to pass it to his daughter in the next few years. Now, under the old exemption, around $13 million per person.
Still sounds high, but...
But Carlos was worried. Timberland values were rising fast in his area. What if inflation pushed his assets over that $13 million mark by the time he passed? His daughter could face a big tax bill.
A legitimate concern. Created uncertainty.
Big time. Forced complex, maybe costly estate planning moves. But now...
With the $15 million individual, $30 million couple exemption.
That worry is pretty much gone for him. Even if his assets keep growing, he feels confident he can transfer the whole operation to his daughter without triggering federal estate tax.
That's huge peace of mind.
Absolutely. For you listening, if you're thinking about retirement, succession, this gives you so much more flexibility. Avoids those painful choices, selling land, dismantling the business. It really helps preserve those family legacies.
It shifts the focus maybe from tax avoidance planning to actual business succession planning.
Well put. It really does. It raises that question. How does this change your long-term plan for your family business?
Okay, so these are some pretty powerful advantages. Permanent QBI boost, massive Section 179 increase, huge estate tax relief. Sounds almost too good to be true for these businesses. There have to be trade-offs, right?
There definitely are. The white paper is very clear on this. It's not all upside. There is a significant shift away from sustainability incentives. That's a major trade-off.
So while boosting core operations, it pulls back on green initiatives.
Exactly. The act either eliminates or significantly reduces a whole bunch of clean energy tax credits. Many of those were introduced just a few years ago in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Which ones specifically are we talking about?
Things like credits for energy-efficient commercial buildings, better insulation, HVAC for mills or offices, credits for clean vehicles, electric trucks maybe, and incentives for advanced manufacturing components, which could have helped develop greener mill tech.
So a clear pivot away from prioritizing those things at the federal level.
A very clear pivot. And the direct impact is pretty simple and potentially painful for some.
Higher costs if you want to go green.
Significantly higher out-of-pocket costs if you're looking at, say, electrification, putting solar on the mill roof, other efficiency upgrades. The federal money that made those projects look good on paper, it's largely gone or reduced.
So businesses have to rerun the numbers, basically, the ROI changes?
Completely. You have to justify these projects more on their own internal merits now, without that federal sweetener.
Is there an example for this side of the coin?
Yes, the white paper talks about Bruno.
Okay, Bruno.
Bruno runs a firewood business in West Virginia. Small operation, but efficient. He recently added a kiln drying operation.
Kiln-dried firewood, yeah. Big market for that. Energy intensive, though.
Very. So Bruno was planning a $48,000 solar project for his facility, offset that energy use, save costs, be greener.
Makes sense. And under the old rules, the Inflation Reduction Act.
He was counting on about a 30% tax credit. That's roughly $14,400 back in his pocket via taxes. That credit was pretty critical to making the project pencil out.
And under the new law?
That credit's likely gone, phased out or eliminated. So Bruno loses that expected $14,000 incentive.
Ouch. Does he still do the project?
The white paper suggests it might delay it or even cancel it altogether. That's a big financial hit to absorb.
So the message for listeners considering green projects.
You absolutely have to reassess the ROI, dig into state-level programs, look for grants maybe, but don't assume those federal credits are still there. The financial assumptions have changed.
And it wasn't just the credit amounts, was it? Weren't there other changes affecting these green projects?
Yes, good point. The white paper also flags the loss of what are called transferability provisions and tighter construction deadlines for any credits that do remain.
Transferability. That let businesses sell credits they couldn't use.
Exactly. If your business didn't have enough tax liability to use a credit, you could sell it to another company that did. It was a way to monetize the credit, bring in outside investment, especially helpful for smaller projects or businesses in rural areas.
And that's gone now, or harder to use.
Much harder. It really undermines those third-party financing options that were just starting to get traction. Makes funding these projects tougher, particularly for smaller operators. A chilling effect, really.
Okay, so major tax cuts on one hand, significant pullback on sustainability incentives on the other. What else? Are there other disadvantages or things people need to watch out for?
There are a few more things the white paper flags as important considerations.
Lay them out for us.
One is the permanent limitation on excess business losses.
Excess business losses. What does that mean?
Okay, so this rule limits how much business loss a non-corporate taxpayer, again, think sole proprietors, pass-through owners, can deduct against their non-business income, like wages from another job or investment income.
And this rule is permanent now.
Yes. It was temporary, now it's permanent under this act.
Why is that a concern?
Because during bad economic times, which happen in cyclical industries like timber.
For sure. Price swings, shutdowns.
Right. This rule could essentially lock up your business losses. You might not be able to use them fully to offset other income, which hinders your ability to recover financially. It makes bouncing back from a tough year or several tough years harder.
So a potential risk, especially for smaller operators during downturns, needs careful cash flow planning.
Definitely needs to be factored into contingency planning.
Yeah.
Another point is a bit more subtle.
Okay.
The white paper notes a broader trend in this legislation, a sort of de-emphasis on federal investment in conservation and climate resilience.
How so? Were there direct cuts?
Not in the final House version. No direct cuts to Forest Service funding or big conservation programs were included in this specific bill. But the overall direction, the priorities shown by where the tax breaks are going versus where they aren't, signals a shift.
A shift away from prioritizing those things.
That's the concern raised. And the worry is that these programs, public land stewardship, cooperative grants, wildfire mitigation, things that indirectly benefit forest businesses.
By ensuring healthy forests, stable resources, protecting timberlands?
Exactly. Those programs could become targets in future budget fights or other legislation. So if your business relies on or benefits from those federal conservation efforts, it's something to watch.
A potential long-term risk, even if not an immediate hit.
Correct. It's about the direction of federal priorities.
Okay. Anything else? What about things that were discussed but didn't make it into the final bill?
Yes. That's important too. There were some really controversial proposals floating around earlier.
Like what?
Well, one was a plan to authorize the sale of, get this, 3.3 million acres of Forest Service and BLM land, potentially for housing development.
Wow. 3.3 million acres. That would have been huge.
Massive impact. There were also proposals for direct cuts to Forest Service funding, especially hitting programs funded by the Inflation Reduction Act.
But those didn't happen.
Correct. The white paper states clearly they were removed before the final House passage. They are not currently part of the law, which was a relief to many.
But I sense a but coming.
But the white paper adds a strong caveat. These ideas are far from dead.
Meaning they could come back.
Absolutely. They could resurface in the Senate's version or in future bills. The fact they were seriously considered means they remain a potential threat.
So for businesses relying on public timber, grazing access, forest roads, that uncertainty lingers.
It's a crucial uncertainty for long-term planning. Requires ongoing vigilance, even though it's not law today.
Okay. So that's a lot to digest. Big advantages, serious trade-offs, lingering risks. Given all this, what should businesses actually do now? What are the action items?
The white paper offers some pretty clear recommendations.
Let's hear them. What's step one?
Step 1, accelerate capital investment. Take advantage of that huge $2.5 million Section 179 cap now. The law rewards acting quickly on equipment upgrades, modernization.
Use it or lose it, basically, or at least maximize the immediate benefit.
Pretty much. Second, talk to your tax pro,
Always good advice.
especially now. You need to optimize that new 23% QBI deduction. There can be complexities with wage limits or asset thresholds depending on your situation. Get expert help to maximize it.
Don't leave money on the table. Okay, what else?
Update your estate and succession plans immediately. That new $15 million per person, $30 million per couple exemption is a game changer for passing on the business. Revise your plans to reflect that reality.
Makes sense. Secure the future.
Fourth, reassess those clean energy projects.
Right. Back to Bruno's situation.
Exactly. The old financial assumptions probably don't work anymore without those federal credits. You need to rerun the numbers, look hard for state incentives or grants if you still want to pursue them.
So, accelerate capital spending, consult tax pros, update estate plans, reassess green projects. Anything else?
Just the overall strategic view. The white paper concludes that for most operators, especially pass-throughs, the benefits of this bill likely outweigh the risks.
Good news for many.
But those risks, the sustainability pullback, the potential future land policy shifts, the loss limitation, they absolutely demand attention, planning, and engagement.
So revisit your business plans. Look at sustainability goals, stress test for downturns, understand your public land exposure.
Exactly. Be informed, be prepared, be agile.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. Key takeaways from this deep dive on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Well, takeaway number one. This act delivers a really powerful set of tax advantages. QBI, Section 179, estate tax relief. These can genuinely strengthen the finances of forest product businesses, especially those pass-through entities.
Big potential boost to the bottom line and long-term stability.
Definitely. But takeaway number two, these benefits come with that clear trade-off, the loss of sustainability incentives, plus that lingering uncertainty about future land policy and conservation funding.
It's a mixed bag, requires careful navigation.
Absolutely. And takeaway three, this is a major reworking of tax policy. It signals a shift in priorities.
Yep.
And as the white paper says, the law rewards those ready to act.
Especially those who plan strategically in this changing environment.
Precisely. Foresight and agility are key.
So, thinking bigger picture now, maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. This legislation, it's more than just numbers, right? It's a signal about federal priorities.
A very clear signal, shifting maybe from broader green goals towards more direct economic stimulus for certain sectors.
Which leads to a crucial question for you, listening as a mid-career professional. How does your long-term strategy need to adapt? Not just to grab the immediate tax breaks, but to navigate this whole evolving landscape around sustainability, land use, federal support.
Yeah, what new opportunities might actually arise from these shifts, maybe unexpected ones? And how can you proactively shape your business, your career, to really thrive, maybe even lead in this new environment?
It's definitely a challenge. Requires more than just reacting. It needs real strategic foresight.
A critical question indeed. Needs continuous learning, continuous adaptation.
Well, thank you for helping us unpack all of that today, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive, presented as the FBS Podcast.
Hope it was helpful.
We encourage you to keep learning, keep planning, keep thinking strategically about your business and your future. Until next time, stay informed and stay proactive.
Hey, this is Steve Bick with the Forest Business School. Thanks for listening to the FBS podcast, and I hope you will subscribe. The truth is, these deep dives barely scratch the surface of some of the topics we cover in the Forest Business School programs, and the podcast is a way of reaching a wider audience. Check out my website at vtfbs.com for more information. Reach out if you want to talk about one of the FBS programs or have custom training or project needs that you'd like to discuss. Again, thanks for listening to the FBS podcast.